Alrighty, we are here with Jake Peters, the Chief Technology and Product Officer, aka CPTO, aka C3PO. Shout out George Lucas of Fora, a travel agency, travel advisory that's shaken up the game. Jake, thank you so much for joining. Thanks you so much for joining. If I could talk, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, of course. And I'm going to talk all things travel. But before that, and before we get into travel tech, let's start with just tech. So,
All right.
obviously, you're someone who's very familiar with technology, everything from IT to everything non-IT. You can tell the extent of my tech knowledge. But what
IT
was
and
it?
stuff.
Yeah, IT and stuff. What was it from whatever mystery age that first got you interested in the world of tech?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if I really, it was I don't even know when it started, like plugging computers together. My dad worked for himself and had computers, and we had early Macs, and I was like the unofficial. For some people here may remember like Apple Talk cables. They were like 2 feet long and had like a big box on them with like two inputs. And so to make a network between two Macs, you had to have like 30 like of some distance. You had to like string together these cables. So like that was my first job, like plugging cables together. Um, I didn't build my own computers because we were a Mac family, so you couldn't like build your own computers because Macs came pre-built. But so I sort of missed that. But from an early age, I started programming and playing with things, and then I had like a dial-up modem and was on the internet using like a terminal account, and in the early 90s, and it just sort of kept going from there. And then it was easy in the 90s. It was a little bit like more low key than now, and even though I was a teenager, I was in the Boston area, and you could write companies and say, "Hey, I want an internship, or I'm interested in working for you," and people would hire you to do things. So I had these really early experiences during high school working at internet companies, doing all sorts of stuff, from customer support services at a dial-up ISP to uh, I worked at Harvard, like in their internal team that managed the network at the university. So there were like 8 of us, and we they have a huge distributed network across all of Harvard and all the teaching hospitals there, and there were only 8 people that managed all of the core routers. And so there were 3 interns that summer, maybe plus the 8 people, if I remember correctly, and it was an academic environment. So they're like, Jake, you take the seat in front of the keyboard, plugging into like these very expensive Cisco routers, and OC48 like fiber cables to really fast connections. And they're like, okay, Jake, like type this. And so because it wasn't a corporate environment, we really got to learn. And so that was fun. And then at that time, I was also studying computer science at Penn, and for example, going back and taking like a graduate level networking class. Like I didn't know all the queuing theory math, but I knew queuing because like I had done it on real routers that previous summer or something like that. So um, I think in the 90s, if you were into tech, you were able to get exposed to a lot of really, serious and cool things at the same time. And then I realized after that, I, didn't want to go. I taught myself how to program. I studied computer science, and I looked around at the workplace, and I wanted to sort of do something that was more applied. The jobs at that time, for me, being just a coder, were not as interesting. And I was also interested in sort of how the technology was used in the business. So now you'd say this is product, or a whole sort of, now you can be an engineer and be like more on the front lines. Back then it was like you're an engineer and you're very much not on the front lines. And I wanted to be involved with users and customers and like the actual mechanics of the business. And so I went into consulting, where my technical background was really useful. And then my career sort of got started that way.
So you were thrown into the fire with multiple Ivy League exposure, learning and working, and um, I think coding is obviously so important. It continues to be so important. You were like a super coder early on. Just to give a snapshot of today, how often are you actually doing the coding these days?
Zero, So
Yeah, what's coding?
yeah, well, I wish I don't know. I, it's a slippery slope because I really like, so the, what I think is really powerful is or fun for me is like the building of things. And there's really nothing more satisfying than putting stuff together and running it for the first time and seeing it work and actually seeing the thing like the hello world come up on screen or, something much more complicated. If you start going down that path, um, I like what would happen is I'd be neglecting the other parts of my job really fast. And so um, I'm not doing that. It's also hard. I'm a little behind on like how the team is thinking about process. We have a large team now, and so there's process, there's reviews and pull requests and things like this. And me just going in and doing something quick is kind of not the best way to collaborate with that team. So I realized this in my last startup when I was like going in and just making changes in the very early days. They were like, "Please stop doing this. Like, just tell us what you. I know we like know you can do it. Just like tell us what you'd like us to do, and we'll do it. Like write a ticket." And I was like, "Okay, I got it." Um, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe at some point, I always say this like at some point when I have more time, but there's never more time. So I find that, if I'm doing something, the best value that I can create or add to the team here is helping communicate or clarify issues or talk about what we're building or connect dots for people. It's not like sitting there with my headphones on and coding.
So you like building things. So let's get to something pretty big that you're building. So let's get to Fora. Really, really cool travel company that's doing stuff a bit different. When was the first time, or how did you first hear of what would become Fora?
Um, yeah, I actually have the email from,
And we're gonna read. You're gonna hold
yeah.
it up. We're gonna dictate it here.
Oh
No, I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
I dictated. No, it was 2021. There's three co-founders of Fora. The other two, Evan and Henley, uh, came up with this idea. They come from the travel space, and so this was their creation. They I've known Evan for 15 years now. When we both lived together abroad, and then we both ended up back in New York, and we were both founders, and we would sort of meet every quarter or so at the local diner and just like have eggs and complain about stuff that only founders can like sympathize with, and just people, often a lot of people issues, and just get advice from someone who really doesn't know your company or yourself. It's like really useful to do that. And then we sort of stopped for a bit, family, kids, life, whatever. And in 2021, we both were looking for new things, and we reconnected and we're talking about a whole bunch of different opportunities. He was doing this with other people too. I was doing this with other people too. One of the things that came up was with him and between him and Henley was Fora. I went away for a couple weeks with family and came back, and he's like, "I need to tell you about this opportunity." And uh, I thought he was joking. Like literally, I probably said like, "You're joking," because some context there is he had just come out of like a kind of tricky situation with his previous travel company. It was the middle of COVID, like travel, why travel now? I didn't, and travel agencies specifically, I was like, you got to be kidding. And then when we talked through the opportunity in about 20 minutes or so, it just clicked. And I realized, okay, this is actually something quite big. There's a real opportunity here. And it was it was almost reinforced by the fact that I didn't understand it at first. I think that's one of the attractive features of this. And after my last startup, I realized the thing I wanted to do was build. There was sort of two things. One was build in a really, really big market, having built in a smaller market before. Just for we could talk all about that, like why it's easier to swim downstream, and kind of you have more room to maneuver, and you can be really successful. You could build a massive company. You don't have to take over the whole market. Travel is something everyone does, for the most part, and people, no matter what, are spending money on travel. Like even if in good times and bad times, maybe they dial it up, dial it down, do different things, but people need to travel. The other thing was uh, I have a little bit of, I have a little ADD in me, and or maybe a lot, if you, depending on how you know me. And I was really nervous coming out of my last startup, like deciding now what I wanted to do for the next many years. Like I was kind of secretly hoping we could found something that was, this would be like the last job I have. Like we're going to build this for the next 20 years, and I'm just keep doing it. And so it was hard for me to say. I was looking around at blockchain stuff and other kinds of things. I really like cryptography. I like smart contracts, and I'm like, is this what I really want to commit myself to? And so when this came up, um, we talked a little bit about, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, like what we're building from the tech side. But there's like 75 things to build here, and so it allowed me to kind of exist in this permanent state of like ADD. I don't have to make a choice because we're building a CRM tool, we're building workflow tools, we're building fintech tools, we're building a booking platform. We have integrations with so many different people. There's like traveler focused websites, there's advisor focused websites, there's eventually supplier focused websites. Like there's so much surface area to the product that we're building. It's also like there's a whole under the scenes stuff about um, uh, a huge data component to what we're doing. There's AI opportunities, and we're pushing forward on that a lot. So it was kind of like, okay, you can just kind of build everything. And so, uh, back to this thing, you sort of made a joke about the Ivy League thing. I think it comes from the fact that I studied at Penn with 2 degrees, in business and engineering. And the joke about that was that I, I didn't know like which I wanted to do. I mean, I probably would have, if the M&T program at Penn hadn't existed, I probably would have pursued a degree in computer science solely, but I really liked the business side of what I studied also. And like that program allowed me to not have to choose, just like coming to Fora sort of allowed me to not have to choose what I wanted to work on. I could work on everything.
Yeah, that sounds like there's everything and more to work on. But yeah, it is. It's crazy exciting when there's an opportunity to just tackle like a giant meatball like that, like an industry that's been around for a while, but is due to have some changes to it. So for like the travel industry, what is it about like 2021 or looking back to the 10 years before that? What is it about the travel industry that was just like ripe for disruption?
Yeah, um, that's a great question. So we think about Fora, we talk a lot about this better equation in travel, which if you visualize this equation, it's like a triangle, where you have travelers, the travel partners, or people say suppliers, but for tactical purposes, you could think hotels, cruises, the actual people providing the hospitality. And so you have travelers, suppliers, and advisors. And there's stuff that's ripe for change in each of those areas. So let's just talk about advisors first, because that's sort of where it starts for us. We're a platform for people to become travel advisors. So the pandemic was majorly disruptive to the workforce. So many people left the workforce. It also was a time for people to reevaluate their priorities and think about what they wanted to do. And we knew there were specifically women who were displaced in the workforce. And Henley, uh, our other co-founder, and really like our primary co-founder in many senses, has been a travel advisor for her whole career, basically since college. And she saw this with her clients, where she was actually started this process of having two of her clients kind of become their own travel advisors, sort of in her company. And these were women who were returning to the workforce, who were displaced by work in the pandemic or kids. And we realized there's like actually a larger opportunity here to bring people back into the workforce and provide meaningful opportunity for work for people who want to be travel entrepreneurs. So that's the first thing. And we could talk at length about sort of the existing state of the travel advisor industry and host agencies and stuff like this. But there's not really, there are other host agencies that welcome people in as new people to the industry, not so much at the luxury level where we play, where you have preferred partnerships with the top hotels and you're a virtuoso agency. Um, we wanted to really, and not one where it's really affordable. And we create, I mean, we could talk about Fora and all of our USPs, but we have a real strong sense of community, and we have a really robust training program, and we like help people become the travel advisor that they want to be in a really proactive and meaningful way. So we knew there was this opportunity with advisors. On the traveler side, people started to, there's definitely this sense of overwhelming amounts of information out there when it comes to travel. Like I think a couple I don't know how many years ago, but a little bit of time ago, it was nice. Like you could go online and get some recommendations. And now it's like you search for like best restaurants in Paris. It's just like, like there's so much information. There's so many restaurants. Like, are you on Instagram? Are you on TikTok? Like, who are you listening to? You have 3 nights in Paris to make a choice. Like, I mean, I know Paris really well. My wife is from there. We spent a lot of time there. I could give you 100 restaurants to go eat. Like, this is not helpful. Like, it's like, how do you then choose? So if you said to me, where do you want to eat in Paris? I would say, well, let's talk about what you'd like to eat. Like, where are you staying? What do you want to do? Like, is that the primary activity of the night, or is it like you need to eat and then go do something? What kind of meal are you looking for? Are you with kids? Blah, 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 blah. Like, do you want to be cramped in like a spot with young people and it's loud? Like, my parents would say no. Like, that's the last thing they'd want. So, like, the vibe is really important. And from that, I could say, okay, I think you should eat at like these 5 places, so, there's we could swap in some things, but like, let's see what's available for your 3 nights. Right. And that's actually helpful. So I think if you're a traveler, there's many people who have access to people who know things. And in friend groups, there's this person that's the sort of traveler, like, expert person. And so people are looking for recommendations from people that they know versus like going online and doing the research themselves. Even though that's possible, it's like it doesn't with this prolifera this like plethora, excuse me, of content, like, doesn't help you narrow that down. So I think on the traveler side, people are looking for personal connections to to recommendations. On the supplier side, or hotel side, the, the industry has really changed over the last 20 years with the rise of the OTAs, which are online travel agencies, which is inherently a weird name for a website, but you got to go back and be like, there were these travel agencies which had stores. You go into them, and then like Expedia came up, and people were like, "What's this?" And they're like, "Well, it's an online travel agency." So people call them OTAs. Um, Expedia, Kayak, Booking. There's been a lot of consolidation. There's ones in foreign countries now. They've really changed the relationship for hotels to distribute their content by forcing, they have all the power essentially for hotels. And I would include, to some degree, Amex and Chase as cardholder programs, which are mostly booked online, into this as well. And they've been able to really jack up commissions. So it's very expensive for hotels to distribute through those channels, but they do get a lot of volume. And so it's like this like love-hate relationship. Like, they need those travelers to come through OTAs, but they're paying a lot for OTA customer acquisition. Um, and OTAs are spending a lot to acquire travelers. So like booking.com, before the pandemic was, I think, the top, if not one of the top spenders of all the companies with Google, in the advertising space. And you see, like, if you go around Europe, you see booking.com in Google Maps, like, everywhere. So, from a hotel perspective, in the agency space has gotten really fragmented as all these individuals started like little boutique agencies. Now, if you're a hotel and you want to sell through travel agents, you have to come to New York and spend a lot of time going around and whining and dining travel advisors, and you have lunch with 6 people, and it's like, how do you know that those 6 people are the people that are going to move the needle for you? And so we wanted to sort of combine the best of both worlds, like the scale of the OTA, but with the human touch of the personal travel advisor, but with good data and things like this, and help hotels and cruises and other people distribute through a sort of modern travel agency to reach the consumer. So that's the triangle.
I appreciate the what is it? Trigonometry lesson? No, geometry.
Geometry.
Triangle. Yeah. Oh, trig is sine, cosine, all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trig is well, I mean, these are related things, but and if you sort of take the triangle and you like flatten it, you have the traveler, advisor, supplier. So that's like the relationship. But then the supplier, then the traveler arrives and checks in at the hotel. The triangle closes, and now you have a direct relationship between the traveler and the hotel. There's like, as the advisor, you're not there, you're not like on site making sure that the experience is going well. You have to trust that the travel partner that you've booked for your client is doing a good job providing hospitality and its services. So there's definitely a real partnership between these 3 sides that it takes to make the travel happen. And if you sort of visualize this triangle, we're in the middle providing this platform for this triangle to exist, just like other host agencies are, but maybe not with the same tech, maybe not with the same scale and the same community.
And this is why I brought a protractor, compass, and ruler for this conversation, just in case we got into the numbers and math terms. But um, yeah, your approach of like kind of starting with the advisors first and focusing on like what can we do to like make this the best possible experience to like get people back into the workforce, to get people who like want to work and travel in some form and want to give travel tips and recos to people. I feel like that's really smart, and it's part of this growing trend I've seen with some other entrepreneurs I've talked to of like making sure that your team has flexibility. Like we just had on Cara Bogner, who's the co-founder of Top Tier Lessons, which is like episode 306, a new business that's made possible by NIL and college sports, where she like matches college athletes with parents who want sports lessons for their kids. And like their whole business is built on like, look, you're a college athlete, like you can set whatever hours you want. Like this can be as part-time as you want it to, but there's that constant flexibility there. So like it works for everybody. And it sounds like to an extent that's kind of similar to what, the flexibility that Fora provides as well for travel advisors is kind of like making it your own thing. It's almost like you're running your own business kind of under the or energized by Fora.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. Like, and there's sort of a couple examples there. I mean, one is, I mean, technically, it's you're your own contractor, you're your own travel entrepreneur, and we host you on our platform. And so other agencies will host you on a platform without tech. It's like it's a platform. Like, what does a host agency do? It provides you with relationships to suppliers, so you can get perks and great rates. It supplies you with the ability to collect commissions, and which is way more difficult than it needs to be, and something that's plaguing the whole industry actually. But we collect commissions and we pay them out to our advisors. And then we also at Fora have this platform, like literal like website platform, where you log in and we give you workflow tools and a booking platform and other kinds of things. And So in some cases, it's like, this sort of directly connects it to my next point, which is like, it's kind of like Compass was for uh, real estate agents, where you essentially have many legacy real estate agent host companies essentially. Um, and they may or may not have a website for you to log in as an agent, but none of them were as sophisticated as Compass's was when they developed it. I have friends from Penn who worked there on their like platform team, and I was always like, "What are these people doing? Why are there 50 engineers building this website for Compass real estate agents?" And then I saw the platform, and I'm like, "Oh, this is amazing." And I would be lying if I say we didn't take inspiration from this, where you have your clients and you have integrated marketing, and it's like, hey, these people haven't reached out to you in a while, you should reach out to them. So we're definitely sort of building in that direction. And I think that real estate was one of these careers that people went into. So you have a lot of women especially returning to the workforce saying, you know what, like, my corporate job is over. I don't want to go back to being an accountant, I'll be a real estate agent. But it's a little bit more complex. You have to have licensure. You have to get tested. Like, you have to pass tests and exams. Um, and then the one thing that's interesting about real estate is you don't really get to define your geography or your hours. Like, it's very much a local um, business. And so on Saturdays, you're doing open houses, right? Like with a travel advisor, I won't, we sort of have this joke because I love when people, our advisors, our tooling for advisors works on mobile phones. And so I get advisors sending me videos of themselves all the time using our portal, like, at the pool in the Aman in Turks and Caicos, or like at the bar while they're waiting for their friends. They're like making bookings and responding to clients, so it's very much something that you can do embedded into your life wherever you are. Uh, and you don't have to be, like in your town on Saturdays showing houses. You just need access to your computer. So it's kind of like the modern day, I'll go be a real estate agent. And I think we knew there was this segment of people because we had it, as I mentioned before, from Henley's clients who were, I don't know, I don't like, I always feel like it's a dangerous game to give ages, but let's say like late 40s to early 60s, like returning to the workforce women who wanted a new career. But we also, I think one of the things at Fora that surprised us was how quickly we moved beyond that segment to um, men and women retiring from jobs who never left the workforce, looking for like their third or fourth career that was going to take them to the end, and not to be grim about it, but like, they're like sort of last job, right? That they could kind of keep doing forever, because all you need is a laptop, a phone, and like those people had made money, and so they're traveling themselves. It's like it fits with their lifestyle. But what was also surprising was we found all these people who were 25 to 35 who like worked at Google, who were lawyers, who were doctors, who really people who you'd expect to be 100% busy, but were also planning a lot of travel for themselves and their friends and their family. And like, they book stuff like, their grandparents want to take all their cousins and, the mid-level generation away for festive period or for the summer. And it's like someone has to plan that. And so they were doing it anyways. Now they can do it as an official travel advisor and get access to sort of travel advisor things, rates and perks and commission. And so, and additional community and knowledge. And so they could become officially that person who's going to do this every year for their family and their friends. And so we were really surprised by this growth. And then we find that we have a lot of people who are ramping up to do this, because you don't make a ton of money in your first year as a travel advisor. But like, so any agency that says you have to come full time, you're basically saying, okay, I need someone who can earn no money for the first year and a half while they're building their travel advisor business, which limits the diversity of the people that can enter the business. Because you're saying like that person has savings already, or they have a spouse that's earning a lot of money, or they have some way of supporting themselves while they ramp up. At Fora, we say like, you're a professional. You can be a professional travel advisor for as many hours as you want. You can, like ramp down your career, ramp up this other one at your pace, and eventually, make a full switch. And so we have a lot of people in our community that are in that process right now. And it's really fascinating to see people who are like, I'm going to do this over 2 years. And then 6 months in, they're like, I just told 10 people I was a travel advisor. And then those 10 people told two more people and two more people. And now I have 100 clients. And it's like, wow, I could do this a whole year earlier.
By the way, this at the time of this recording, it's around Halloween season. It's spooky season, so feel free to be like as grim and spooky, scary as you want. So any references, totally cool. Which is why I'm dressed as Casper. No, I'm just kidding. But
Yeah,
so
if you had been here next Thursday, where I have meetings in the office. I'm like, we have like a partner coming in, and I'm like, just FYI, we're all going to be in costumes.
extra spooky. So there's so much like care and detail focused on like making this an awesome experience for the team at Fora. How do you then make sure that flows through to make like the best experience possible for actual customers that use Fora?
Yeah, the travelers of those clients. Yeah, I mean, I think
Yes.
so. We don't in HQ have total control over the travel experience with each advisor, because each advisor is an independent operator. Um, our like a couple of things. Our goal is to make it so that our advisors have access to the best information possible, so that they can plan the best trips. I would we we just the volume, when we were smaller, I used to read all of the advisor commentary back and forth. So we have this like very active community that's constantly discussing stuff. And we there's this question of like, okay, I want to go to Europe one year, and I want to go to South America one year, and I want to go to Asia the next year. Like, do I need to switch travel advisors? And the thing is, from a client perspective, the most important part of the relationship with the travel advisor is that the travel advisor knows you. They can spend. It's very hard for the advisor to get to know you as a person, your preferences, whether you sort of, they're a little bit like your financial advisor or your therapist. Like, it takes some time to build this relationship, and they need to know when you say things that you don't really mean, or like, because a lot of it is like telling like the client will say, I want to go do this, and they're like, no, you don't. Like, I'm telling you what you're actually want to go do, because I know you. So the thing that advisors make advisors successful then is that they can share information about destinations. Because if you know me and you're my travel advisor, and you haven't booked the thing that I want to go do, like the Galapagos Islands, there's hundreds of advisors here that are experts on the Galapagos Islands, and people are really more than willing to share all of that information with you. And so we have a whole setup with our community and WhatsApp groups and other ways for advisors to chat about that stuff so that you could get smart on the different cruise options to the Galapagos Islands, or what might I want to do in Ecuador combining with the Galapagos Islands, and et cetera, et cetera. What's the best way to fly there? Um, but you know me, and you know that like I'm not going to want to do more than 2 days on a boat, or I'm not going to want to do like this thing, or I have my kids are like this and are too little to do this other thing, and so you can sort of easily provide a great experience for me by marrying the community information together with your knowledge of the client. And so our goal is to create systems and tooling to make that happen in a really seamless way, um, because not every advisor knows everything. It's just, even at smaller host agencies, like anyone who tells you they know everything is lying. And there's a very famous um, advisor. Her name is Valerie Wilson. She's very emblematic of the industry. Her She has grandkids already. I mean, she's not new to the industry. I've been at trade events where I'm like standing next to her, talking to a hotelier who's like with his little table and stand presenting hotels, and she's asking like questions and learning about these hotels. So there's never. It's one of my other passions is wine, and I say this a lot about wine. Like I have friends who are like winning awards like best sommelier in the world kind of thing, and even they have more information to learn. There's you can never know all the information, and so I think when it comes to providing client experiences that are really impactful, it's like, how do you get access to all of this great information in the most efficient way possible, because there's always more to learn.
And I have one more uh, VC on the hot seat question for you now, but
Okay. I'm
about
I
what
love
about the
doing
tech
the
side?
Q
Yeah,
and A.
yeah, of course.
But that's the
Oh, and
thing
then we
about
got
being the third co-founder. Like my two co-founders do like the kind of prepared remarks, and then I often don't go to those meetings. And then they're like, Jake, they want to do like the Q&A with you on the tech stuff. I'm like, I'm ready.
you're like the utility infielder, outfielder, um, ready for anything. But on the tech side, like I know there's a whole can of worms you can open with tech, but just like high level, what is like an endeavor that you and the tech team at Fora did and was like a big focus that you think has like been the biggest driver to the growth of the company so far?
Sure. I have the obvious answer, but I'm just like mentally checking to make sure that I don't have any. There's nothing else that I would say along with that, but it's definitely the booking platform. So we've booking hotels is really interesting, because if you're a travel advisor, you have access to all of these preferred partnership rates, through a good host agency like that has that. So we have that. So we have consortias that we're a part of, like Virtuoso, um, or small leading hotels, and other ones. We have hotels have their own preferred partner programs like Hyatt Privé, or Rosewood Elite. And then we also have negotiated deals with individual properties, or we've negotiated our own bespoke deals, with a brand like Auberge that doesn't have a chain wide, preferred partner program. So then to go access those, so let's say your client wants to go to Hawaii and you want to like get all the preferred partner rates and see all of the stuff that we have in Hawaii without the traditional way, I guess you could do this is you go on the GDS, which would involve like a matrix, like looking, like in the old days when you go to airlines and you'd see this, like them typing in a terminal system that, with like command line prompts. This is the GDS. And it was invented in the 70s on mainframes for airlines, and then quickly also expanded to hotels and other things. And is kind of like a clearinghouse of information that allows you to book uh, airlines, which is primarily the business, but also hotels. And they have connectivity to all the different hotel chains, and hotels load and rates in and distribute them through the system. And so you can use it through these like antiquated interfaces, or they all have APIs now, the main GDSs, and you can build your own interface on top of it. So we've spent a lot of time building our own booking platform on top of our GDS partner. So if you see our Fora Advisor portal, it looks like a very beautiful consumer grade OTA website. Like I think ours, I'm biased, but I think ours really looks nice, but has a lot more details around perks and commissions. And we've integrated community things like client reviews, advisor reviews. So if you're an advisor and you go visit a hotel on a site tour, you can take pictures and leave your comments and upload that right into our booking platform. You can see how many times people have booked this. And very soon we'll extend this to like people who book this also book this, and all sorts of other data that we have proprietary to us in our own booking platform. But from partners, you can now see in one place all of our preferred partner rates. And you can also, now that we've done the next step, we have all of the best sort of rates from people like Expedia and Booking, and all the stuff that you'd see if you were to search on Google in the sidebar where you see all these wholesaler rates and OTA rates. So as an advisor, you're able to tell your client, who may be new to working with a travel advisor, look, like uh, I want to recommend this property for you in Paris. We have a preferred partnership deal. Here's a non-refundable rate. Sorry, here's a refundable rate. It has perks. It's going to cost, when you look this up on Google, you're going to see a rate that's $100 less, but it doesn't have the breakfast and the upgrade and this other stuff, this spa credit. So actually our rate is cheaper if you actually value it correctly. But if you want to book this other rate, I can also book that for you too. And so we've combined all of this together in a really easy to use interface, along with soon to roll out very soon advanced features that let you track price changes over time and see alerts on price changes for bookings you've already made and other kinds of things. And there's really no other, I've looked at all of the other tools out there that exist for travel advisors. And from a booking side, there's nothing that kind of, there's other things, but they don't come close to exactly what we have built for our advisors. So that's been the most powerful thing that I think makes it easy to step into this, because without that, you're like opening 100 tabs and you're searching around and you're writing information down on spreadsheets, or like on notepads, and then you're consolidating it. And it's really a lot of work to get simple answers for your client.
Yeah, well, congrats and thank you for that. That is like the biggest pain point I think overall with travel. It's like you have this awesome uh, reward at the end of it going on a trip, but there's so much effort going into it and just planning it. And so whatever you and team could do to make that as simple and easy as possible is just awesome. And so it sounds like you've done a ton of work on the tech side. I know there's plenty more work to be done. I want to switch gears a little bit because on top of everything you're doing with your plate full at work, you revealed when we were chatting earlier that actually at home you have 3 kids under 5, including twins. You're a co-founder of a startup, and now, hot off the press, your wife is co-founder of a startup as well. So,
Well, she's not, she's
congrats.
technically not a co-founder, but she's like one of the first employees of a non-alcoholic beer company called BeerOBrewing.com.
Yeah, congrats on that. That's a really exciting space to be in, and I'll consider her a co-founder. Well, they can deal with me on the waterfall chart or whatever. But you can tell I don't know funding. But my just big question is like, how do you guys do it all?
Well, we don't sleep a lot. Uh, I think in some ways startups offers like, so she was off work for a little bit, and before going back to work, um, we were sort of talking about, I think in her mind, she was going to go to like a big company, and kind of not hide, because she's a hard worker. So there's no way she doesn't like, she doesn't have like a, and neither of us have like a kind of middle gear. Like if we're going to do something, we work extremely hard. So the question is, what are you committing yourself to? And I think, in the corporate world where it's like very political and you can sort of like detach a bit more, but you deal with like these frustrations that kind of come up, and there's unpredictability. Like someone needs a, PowerPoint like tomorrow, and you're like, okay, great. I mean, the startup world it's a little bit more tolerable in the startup world because you're doing it a little bit for yourself, and you ultimately have more flexibility because these small companies, it's a team of 10 people. Um, if you need to duck out for an hour, you can kind of move a meeting around your schedule. So, we also have great support system at home, with an excellent nanny, and like our schools are near us, and we're very fortunate in that regard. We have neighbors, and but to say that we don't like put the kids to bed and then when we're home and like immediately both get back on our computers and work for hours is that's what we do. I think we both like working, so that's good. And I'd rather be working. I mean, I'm assuming I don't want to speak for her, but I think we'd both rather be working for ourselves in some sense, than working for some bigger company. And so it makes it rewarding to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, So you have a great system in place, but obviously, like it's still a lot of work mentally, or to set those boundaries to be like, all right, like when we're home and our kids are not sleeping yet, like we need to be as present as possible. How do you kind of
Yeah, I
establish
mean,
that?
I think that the thing is like to put the, and I'm really bad at this, and she reminds me, we sort of have to figure out how to help each other because, I run out of work a little bit earlier. The day isn't quite over, it's 6 when I'm home. Um, so there's still messages coming in, and if I have my phone on me, I'm looking at them. Um, so what I try to do is, and I'm not always, I mean, to be totally honest, I'm not always successful in this, but what does work is if you take the phone out of your pocket and put it on the counter, um, away from you, and then you just don't have it on you. And I actually I stopped wearing my Apple Watch because I mean, I loved my Apple Watch, and I was like, I don't need these notifications all the time. Like, I don't need to know that I have a text message or I have an email coming in. And so it was more work to figure out how to fine tune that than just like taking the Apple Watch off. So now I have a old school watch, and a phone that I can put down. And so I think the key is like we both put our phones down and then you don't look again. The problem is like then we'll be sitting around eating and we're like, hey, what's the weather like tomorrow? And then you're like, the phone, and then or like it's like, hey, what time is this happening? And you're like, okay, we need to Google something. And then you quickly pick up your phone and there's like 17 notifications. It's so hard. So um, my son and I have recently started doing things where I use ChatGPT to create stories. Um, uh, I don't know. We have this joke about the tickling fantôme. We speak French,
Oh,
at home. He speaks English and French. So the tickling fantôme is a ghost. Anyway, it was like we used to like hide under blankets and tickle each other, and we were joking that we were like the tickling ghost. So we started creating this series of stories using ChatGPT. So it has brought a little bit of the phone into like the the bedtime routine, but what I try to do instead of like you can generate these stories and then have the app read them. And if I don't put the phone down, I'll like switch the app and start like reading Slack while it's like reading the story. So what I do is I like literally try to set it to read out loud and put the phone down, over there. Um, so I'm present and actually like listening to the story. And he notices, if I'm doing that or not. So uh, I think that's really the only way to do it. And like the messages will wait. And then as soon as the kids are down, it's like, okay, we're both like, we can ignore it. We either eat dinner together, and don't try not to look at our phones, or we're like, okay, let's just eat dinner at our desks, our home desks, and like, get back to work so we can get to bed as fast as possible.
yeah, appreciate that. I think that's golden. Of like obviously we rely on our phones so much, and like our phones make so much possible, but also like just the pure genuine family time, like the most important thing in that moment can be leaving your phone on the counter or in another room, or like making sure you're present. And it is really tricky because it's like, something's really cute's happening. You're like, oh, we should take pictures or videos of this, and then it's like, oh, you're seeing your emails and your texts again. So really, really, really tricky there. But by the way, that is the probably the most fun and ticklish use of ChatGPT I've ever heard. So,
It's great. And you can make it read in different accents. So, um, we, we have it say French words with a French Canadian accent, just the, the phantom chatouilleur. It's like, it's fun. And you can like have it modify the stories. And we're still then I was like, I'm sure other people are doing this, so I started to go down a rabbit hole and like Reddit. There's like tons of people that are like sharing prompts for like more advanced stories. But what's really nice is you can say I need a 4-minute story, um 2-minute story, 5-minute story, so I can go back to a previous story and say regenerate this with like a slightly different version and make it 3 minutes, and there you have a bedtime story.
well, we're much better off with you pronouncing French or French Canadian than me. Um, and we're much better off with you answering rapid fire questions than me. So let's wrap up with some rapid
All right,
fire Q and A. You ready for it?
let's do it.
All right, let's get wild. Phantom. How did I do? See,
Phantom,
um,
Phantom. I don't know.
Phantom,
I don't know.
Phantom.
My accent
I'm
is
0 for 1.
also it's a mess.
All right, let's get wild. What is the hands down tastiest sip of wine you've ever had? Like, what wine was it?
Oh, easy. 19, my birth year, which I'll expose for everyone here, 1978. Domaine Romani Conte, which is the famous expensive Burgundy. It wasn't their most famous or expensive cuvee, but it was a Echezot. And I can't expose where I had this, but it wasn't my bottle. But someone graciously gave me 20 ml sip of this wine that I smelled for like 2 hours and then finally drank. I'll never forget this.
And you can reveal it. It was me who gave it to you. So
Yes, yes,
you're
thank you so
welcome
much.
once again. Merci.
It was a New Year's Eve at a
Um,
restaurant, and if that person listens to this, thanks again.
I'm sure they were. I'm sure they will. Again, it is me. So perks. We didn't dive into it too much, but Fora offers a ton of perks and like potential upgrades and little, sweet things like that. One of my guests called it, what's it? Creature comforts, things like that. What just you as a
Creature
traveler?
Comforts is the name of a Wallace and Gromit cartoon. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but Google Creature Comforts. It's like a British people being voiced. They've used like claymation to use animals to with like real live interviews of British people. Anyway, it's one of
Oh
my
my
favorite.
god, that's no. Thank you so much for
There's like a
interjecting because
lion who has like a Brazilian guy living in England talking about how there's space. Anyway, I think it's called Creature Comforts.
thank you. Perfect. Well, that was why I brought this up.
Yeah.
I'm actually, I know I grew up on Wallace and Gromit and haven't thought about Wallace and Gromit since growing up. So thank you for that. I'm gonna deep dive after this. But anyway, you as a traveler, what's your like favorite perk? Like if you find out you have some sort of like upgrade, what's your go to? Like this is awesome.
Um, that's a good question. I think I mean, the upgrade is really nice. Like, having more space, not to bring it back to space, a better view, space, like usually somewhere to sit that's not your bed. And I'd say I was a consultant. I was a consultant for 8 years, and lived in hotels in Monday, for most of the week. And after I went abroad and did this, and I realized like after a year of living basically in hotels for like a year straight, the thing that I hadn't done was sit on a sofa because like if you're staying at like a business hotels, like there's no sofas. Like we weren't getting upgrades, so there's like you're in a regular room, there's no sofa. So I think going to a room where you have an upgrade and like a sofa and like a lounge area is really nice. Also breakfast. I'm a big breakfast guy, so the breakfast included is the nicest perk of all of these things, and I think people don't quite everyone has had this experience who's traveled ordering room service or getting the bill at breakfast, and you're like, wait, this is $75. Like, what is this? Like $15 tax and $10 service charge. So just having that be zero is really nice.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on both of those. We did a Spain and Portugal trip this summer, which was awesome, and like we were really happy with all the hotels. But some of our favorite parts were like the rooms that did have like a sofa or a couch, or how do you say? It looks like whatever.
Shays Lounge, like a Shays
Perfect.
Lounge.
Yeah, whatever has one of those. And also like breakfast is so hit or miss. Hotels that offer it versus you need to pay for it. So crazy. But all right, what was the most difficult class you took at Wharton?
um, I guess it's a toss up between my finance and my accounting classes. I would say I knew I was not going to Wharton to be a finance major, and I knew I was not going to Wharton to be an accountant. And in theory, I like all these things, but like I, 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 as I mentioned, I study computer science, and so the problem with computer science is that the homework can take an unlimited amount of time. Like it doesn't, as we were talking about before, when you're building, like it doesn't you're not done until like the program runs. So we used to sleep in the lab a lot, and uh, that just meant I didn't pay attention in some of those classes. So the fact that I like managed to eke out like a B plus or something in like, accounting 102, I mean, very lucky.
Yeah, I have PTSD from that as well. Like college finance and accounting classes are no joke, and I'm sure at Wharton it's another level. All right, and then what? This could be about anything, just small, minuscule, work wise or personal life wise. What's your biggest pet peeve,
Phew, biggest pet peeve. I don't know.
or any? We'll reframe it to any pet peeve. Something that comes to mind, pet peeve.
I mean, we were just like literally, I was almost late to. It's a good thing we were both a little late because
Yeah, which
I
you
was
just
late.
outed me, by the way.
Yeah,
That's the
sorry.
first time that's ever happened.
Oh, really? Sorry. The
No, I'm just kidding.
well, we were I was sitting with our designers and we were looking at some alignment issues and stuff. I think like one of the things we take. So this is an answer in the realm of product, which is the other job I have at Fora, and I think the thing that I try to instill on people in our whole team is that the way we craft the product that we build is super important. And if you think about like the like thunk of the like 1990s 80s Mercedes door closing, like that solid funk, you want the product to have that feel to it because you can miss a feature, you can be a little bit later with a feature, you can. But if when you use websites yourself, if the website is constructed with whatever that is, the Mercedes door thunk in that way, you really enjoy using the product. And if it's the thing, I think that detracts from that immediately is like weird font sizes or weird alignment or like, wait, why is this spacing, vertical spacing between paragraphs? So I'm kind of annoying about those kinds of things, and I'll be like, we're not releasing this if like this vertical spacing between the paragraphs is not correct, and we haven't really thought about the sizing, the spacing, the sizing of fonts and things like this because to me that's like how we communicate our trust. It's one way we can communicate trust with our users, and so like we've taken the time, like, and I'll give you an example. At Wharton, I took a class which was my favorite Wharton class, information systems, with Lauren Hitt, and I wrote a paper that was like it was a 10-page paper on like a marketplace business model, and I basically described like HomeAway at the time, which is now famously the vacation home rental market has evolved a lot since the 90s. And like I was a procrastinator in college and sometimes still am today. So I wrote the paper and he wrote like, this is an A plus, but please next time just like read the paper because you have all these typos like you would have just caught if you had read it. Like I could literally tell you didn't read it. And I'm a big fan of like reading and rewriting my emails to the team or to clients, and I think it's the same as the product. Like you look at something and you're like, if there's weird alignment, it's like you didn't read it and look at it again. And I think users can feel that, and so it's really a pet peeve of mine when people don't see the little details. And not to say that there's all this talk about like you can't, no one should strive for perfection. Uh, we can make mistakes. That's totally fine. But there's a very big difference between like not doing something and trying to make it perfect, but just saying we need to just make sure that stuff is aligned. This may not be the perfect alignment, but we actually did look at it and it's not unaligned, like or thought out.
That one hits extra close to home because today, the time of recording, I sent out a newsletter this morning, and I'm like, I like to pride myself in being very good with like having few typos, and I like reread multiple times, make edits before I send. And I had a big typo at like the start of the newsletter, and I didn't see it until after I sent it out to everybody. So I'm with you. All right, last one. What would be your dream place to chill out and retire?
Ooh. Um, uh, I'd say probably somewhere in Europe, um, maybe somewhere in Spain, somewhere near the Mediterranean. I love the Mediterranean, and my wife and I took a bike trip in the Costa Brava um, region of Catalonia. That's nice. We were like, as one does, we're like biking and looking up like property websites, like how much does this house cost? Like so that would be fun. I don't know. Let's go with that.
Perfect. Cool. And yeah, maybe we'll run into you as frequenters of Mallorca. No, we've never been, but
Oh well, when you
some of my
go, let me
some of my
know.
wife's
We'll book
family
you.
talks about Mallorca, has a place in Mallorca and loves it there. Yeah, exactly.
There's amazing. I would my for my 40th birthday, my wife got me, which was the trip was slightly delayed, but we went just before the pandemic. It was like our last trip, actually, and did a week in Mallorca. It was amazing, hiking and eating and just exploring. Really special place. So there's amazing hotels there that we work with. So when you're ready to go, if you don't have to stay with your friends, we can hook you up.
Perfect. Well, it all comes full circle. And speaking of full circle, we've gone from C3PO to Wallace and Gromit. So appreciate all the pop culture fandom here. But Jake, thank you so much. This has just been awesome. And Fora, I think what you're doing as a company is so cool for on the travel side, on the travel advisor side, on the supplier side, on the travelers side. I know if people want to learn more, they can do so at foratravel.com. Fora is Fora. And then is there any place that if people want to connect with you online, you want to shout out?
Um, yeah, if it's like for work purposes, LinkedIn is probably the best. I don't really tweet, and my Instagram is more like my kids. So um, I'd say LinkedIn is the best place to see what we're up to here at Fora.
Perfect. Perfect. And then last thing, final thoughts. We'll call it the Fora final thoughts. Just a quote, words to live by, your favorite line from Wallace and Gromit, whatever you want. Send us home here.
Oh, a quote. I think, I was almost going to say this before in one of your other answers, about when you said like team and like how do we ensure a great experience for our clients? And I think I'm stealing something from one of my co-founders says a lot is really servant leadership. And I think we try to the founders try to do this with our team here, and we try to instill that with the other levels of leadership at HQ, but really also for our advisors. Like we're really all existing at HQ to serve our advisors, to help them serve their clients. So it's this real big culture of kind of servitude, and like making sure that like we exist to help other people do their jobs better. And so I think that philosophy is really good. The other thing I'd say is if you want like a recommendation, we were just talking about this internally here. There's two books that I highly recommend to everyone. And I was just trying to figure out how to buy them in bulk for my team. Is one is Danny Meyer's Setting the Table. So he's the founder of Union Square Hospitality Group and the Union Square Cafe. This book is excellent. And you can Google it too. Like there's this clip about the salt shaker metaphor, which I think is really a good analogy around like how as a manager you need to keep your like what your job is to remind people about how to hold standards high and what they need to keep doing. So you can go see it more for yourself. And the other is Atul Gawande's book called The Checklist Manifesto, and he's a great writer. And if you like medicine, like his other books on medicine are really great. He's a surgeon in Boston, and the checklist manifesto is amazing. I also had a job in aviation, so I've seen checklists before in action. And if I've had a lot of surgeries, and so I've seen pre-op checklists in action, as on the operating table. We talk a lot about checklists here at Fora, so I highly recommend this book as well.
Bring on the bongos.